Hey guys, welcome to Sonali's Book Club. And I know it's been a little bit of time. We've been waiting, and but all good things you need to wait for and have patience for. So I know I've taken a bit of time to get on to the next book, but I was hoping I will get the author of the Authenticity Project, Clare Pooley, on the book club. And here we have her on the book club today. And there is Clare Pooley to discuss the book, The Authenticity Project. Hi, Claire. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. I'm in London, where the book is set, and actually at the moment we're in the middle of a very strict lockdown. We've been in lockdown for several months, so I haven't been to a hairdresser for a very long time.
You're looking
So you
lovely.
have to forgive me.
You're looking lovely. And I know it's the lockdown is crazy. We've had a really hard lockdown earlier. And hopefully, fingers crossed, I just hope we don't go through that kind of a lockdown again. But hey, it is what it is. And we have to,
Yeah, fingers crossed.
yeah, good, done with it. So this is a book that came out in the lockdown. And I think it was such a perfect read for me. I've been going through a bit of a lull because, everything with the pandemic and with the way the whole world has been going and the way everything has been going on, everything was just a bit too sad or a bit too dark. It was just, it was just, I was just getting off and not reading as I should be reading. So here was this book that, one of my team members suggested. I can't thank her enough for suggesting this book, because this book saw me through the pandemic and actually put me in a great mood. There's so much of hope and there's so much of joy in this book. And every time that when I talk about hope or joy, everybody thinks it has to be funny. And the people don't understand it's not about comedy and it's not about just fun, but about finding hope and the realness. And it is such a relatable situation. So first of all, I love the title, The Authenticity Project. How did you think of this title?
Oh, you know what? We had such arguments about the title because I came up with the title quite early on when I was writing the book, because it seemed to me to summarize everything that it was about. It was about trying to find authenticity in your life, and
Right.
about the fact that so many of us portray these perfect, wonderful lives which aren't really true, and actually in doing that, we make everybody feel miserable because they look at our social media feeds and they think, oh, my life doesn't match up to that, but nobody's life ever does.
Yeah.
So it seemed to me to be the right sort of title, but a number of the publishers around the world felt that the danger was it didn't sound like a novel, it sounded more like it was non-fiction, and we went round and round. I wrote about 100 different titles and we ended up with the original one.
100.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No wonder we love this so much, because it's just so perfect.
Well, it's funny how sometimes you have to explore lots of alternatives in order to come back to where you started from. I think that's very true of life as well as of titles.
Yeah, absolutely. So we love the title. And then the book, like I just mentioned, it was uplifting. It was feel good. It was perfect for the current situation, especially in pandemic, with everybody cooking up a storm and putting up all these amazing pictures and social media feed, and you start feeling like, oh my God, I'm sitting in this place and really doing nothing when people are doing so much. And it was just really important to read this book, and it kind of gave me a perspective which I was missing because of the whole heaviness of the pandemic. But like I said, that it did set me on track where social media was concerned. Is there anything more you would like to add about the social media and what you're going through with social media today? And because obviously there's a lot that you've seen in it that made you write this book.
Yes, I mean, actually, the book came from my very personal situation, because about 6 years ago, almost exactly 6 years ago, if you looked at my social media, my life looked really perfect. And, I lived in a nice house and I had nice holidays and a happy family and 3 lovely children. And it all looked really, really perfect. But the truth was very different, because I was very badly addicted to alcohol, and secretly I was drinking way too much. And I knew I had to stop drinking, and I was too ashamed to tell anyone about it. And I didn't tell my friends and I didn't tell my family. And what I did was I started a blog and I told the truth about my life on this blog, all the truth, everything. And through that, I found thousands and thousands of people all around the world just like me. And, you know, writing the truth saved my life, and it helped save the lives of thousands of people that read my story. So, you know, that was really what started me being interested in the power of telling your truth.
Right.
And the difference between what we show and who we really are, because I realized that it wasn't just me that was putting up this front. Everybody has something going on in their lives that isn't perfect. And, you know, when you understand that, it makes you feel so much happier and so much more normal and so much more empathetic to other people. You know, you realize that when people are angry, often it's because something in their life isn't right. And that was really what got me interested in writing this book. So it's a very personal story, really.
You started with writing blogs, and that's where it kind of is that when the writing process started for you, when you started writing the blogs?
Yes, I'd always loved reading and writing. So if you asked me when I was a small child what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would have said I want to write novels because I love stories. But you know what it's like, you know, life gets in the way. And, you know, I spent 20 years in an advertising agency, traveling around the world, making, you know, advertisements. And, you know, I was partying very hard and I was living very hard and I had 3 children and everything was very busy. And my dreams sort of got put aside. And, you know, I think with so many of us that happens, you know, you forget what your dreams were. And it's strange, as soon as I stopped drinking, I had this urge to write. And for me, it became my therapy. You know, if writing was a way of me understanding what was going on in my head, and it's a form of mindfulness. You know, it enabled you to stay in the moment and not to look ahead and worry. And I still do that. I still write every day, and I still find that it's therapy, and it's also my original passion. So, you know, it's funny how a lot of people who struggle with addiction say that when they quit whatever, you know, drink, drugs, whatever it is, they refine their childhood passions. And you know, I always tell people, you know, if you're having a difficult time with anything, think back to what you loved as a child. You know, was it reading? Was it writing? Was it riding horses? Was it painting? You know, because I think the key to finding happiness and peace is there.
That's wonderful. What you just said was so wonderful, especially in the times of pandemic. And it's not just when you are battling addiction, but this would be the state today when it's you know, even the simplest of things. And I found this reaching out and kind of getting the support from people helping me when I went through my cancer diagnosis and the way that panned out. And another thing that I realized through it was what you said, that when you find your dream and your passion and, you know, kind of just find the mindfulness, you can just get through it. And that's what we have at SBC and at my this thing, we have a hashtag, we just switch on the sunshine and take one day at a time. And that just kind of takes you through this. You're a parent, you mentioned 3 kids and social media and the way technology is going. How do you deal with social media and parenting?
Oh, you know, it's so difficult, isn't it? Because actually one of the characters in the book, Alice, is a new mum, and she is an Instagram star. So she puts on her Instagram feed beautiful pictures of her and her children, and it makes her really her baby rather, and it makes her really unhappy because she realizes that her life isn't as beautiful as these pictures that she's putting on her Instagram feed. And what she doesn't realize is it also makes all those other mothers out there feel unhappy because they look at her perfect pictures and think, why can't I do it right?
Yeah.
it's difficult because I think right now social media in some ways is a real joy, because it's a way of us keeping connected with people. And you know, my children are now, my two eldest are teenagers, and they use social media all the time, and it's the way they talk to their friends, and it's the way they communicate. And right now they can't see each other in real life, so social media is in a way really important. So I don't think social media is a bad thing. I think it can be a real force for good, but I think it's the way you use it. And you know, when it is all, everything is filtered, and when everything is made beautiful, then you know, it actually makes us less happy. And you know, I try and encourage the children when they use social media to use it to reach out and to be genuine and authentic, and to tell their friends when they're struggling, and not to pretend that everything is perfect. And you know, I had a cancer diagnosis too. Just after I quit drinking, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I found the support of the people who I met through my blog so amazing. You know, I mean, even now I feel really tearful when I think about it.
I understand what you're saying completely. How are you doing now?
I'm fine at the moment. Yes, thank you. I've been clear for 5 years, and I'm keeping everything crossed. So because, as you know, with cancer, you know, you never know what might happen. But you know, I found for me it, you know, whilst I would never want to go through it again, I would never want anyone to go through it. It has transformed my outlook on life in some ways, in that you know, it made me realize that you can't carry on putting things off. You never know what's around the next corner. And you know, I don't think I would have had the courage to try and find a publisher for my writing if I hadn't been through that. I would have always thought, well, one day maybe I'll try, one day. And you know, cancer makes you realize that you don't want to hang around for one day. You want to do, you know, you want to grab life by whatever you can grab it by.
Well said. Yes. Really, really well said. No, I agree with you completely on that. And it's like a wake-up call. And like you said, that you know, this is something that cannot be like, okay, it's out of my body, so I'm going to come back. You never know. So you just start taking each day as it comes, and you start saying that I don't know when it's going to come. So rather than waiting and being like morose about it, let me just make the most of whatever it is that I have, and let me just live it, and let me do what I feel like doing. And then little things that change things. But I found a lot of change in my life, in my relationships. A lot of things change, and it's not dramatic, or not that I had a very sad or a difficult life at all. But you know, in small things, in the way you look at things, it just changes, and your priorities change.
Yeah.
And that's
I think one thing it teaches you is we have an expression which I don't know whether you know as well. Don't sweat the small stuff.
Yes.
Which you know, so I think what it makes you realize is that all those little things that I used to get annoyed about, or I used to think were really important, now I think, hey, who cares?
I have a teenager, and he's like, oh, she's not on my case about my room and getting it clean. And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. You living in the dumpster, no problem. But you know, to get back to the book, there's so many wonderful characters in this book. And I have a hard time in saying that this is my favorite or that is my favorite. Which one is your favorite? And
no,
develop fully first.
Sorry, what did you just say then? So which
one is your favorite? And the second one is, which character did you develop fully first?
Okay. So the favorite is really difficult. That's like you saying, which is my favorite child, you know. And actually, funny enough, my children are always asking, which is my favorite child. But of course, I don't have one. But you know, I think possibly my favorite character, if I had to choose, is Hazard, because he he is the addict like me. So the journey that Hazard goes through is very much the journey that I went through myself. So, you know, there's a scene towards the end of the book where Hazard has a really hard time. I won't go into too much detail in case people haven't read it yet. But, you know, I found it really difficult writing that because, you know, and I found myself apologizing to him in my head. And I was like, I'm really sorry, Hazard, I'm going to, you know, you're going to go through a really hard time here, but it's going to be okay in the end. You know, so you become very fond of your characters. They live in your head for a long time, and they're still in my head. So now, you know, I often think about them in the pandemic, and I think about how they will be coping. And, you know, Monica, for instance, I know would do really well because she, you know, she always keeps things clean, and she loves antibacterial hand gel. And, you know, she would be out there feeding the community and welcoming, you know, people to the cafe. And, you know, so I'm fond of all of them, but possibly Hazard. But the character that came first was Julian. And he came from a place, because the place where he lives, Chelsea Studios, in the book is a real place. It's very close to where I live. And I used to take the double-decker bus. I'd sit on the top of the bus and look at the houses down the street. And Chelsea Studios is over a big wall, so you can only see it from the top of the bus. And when you look over the wall, you see this beautiful little collection of artist studio houses that was built in the 1920s by a sculptor, an Italian sculptor, and he modeled it on his estate in Florence. So it has beautiful little courtyards and fountains, and it's really stunning. And it's right in the middle of London. It's surrounded by houses and traffic and a Chelsea football stadium. And it's this perfect little place. And I used to look over the wall and think, I wonder what would happen if an artist had moved in there in the 1960s, say, and had never left, when the whole world around them changed, but they lived in this little oasis that was still exactly the same. And that was where the idea of Julian came from, because he was that artist that got stuck in a time warp in the 1960s.
Julian was amazing for me also because somewhere he is what we can become, and you know how and it's like, you know, how do we not do that? It's he's a wonderful quirky character, and yet the lies and the facing the truth kind of a moment that he goes through was so wonderful. And it was, for me, it was like, okay, this is what it is, this is what you don't want to be, and you know, this is what you can change right now, and you know, you can have that support system and everything so beautifully. What to do with Australian guy Riley? He's so handsome and so good about him, and you can't help but fall in love with him. And you know, there are times when I felt, how can he be so good, and you know, is something going to happen? And yet it's just so literally what you would say was God's perfect creation in that sense. How did you come about, you know, how did you think of this character?
Well, you know, I found him the hardest to write because he is so perfect. You know, with all the other characters, I started from their flaws. So because I find people's flaws more interesting than their strengths, you know, so because I honestly believe that it's our flaws that make us unique and human and lovable. And, you know, what I hoped was in reading this book that people would realize that, you know, all these characters were flawed, but they were still marvelous. And that hopefully makes you accept your own flaws and realize that, you know, we all have them. You know? So there's a quote in the beginning of the book from Leonard Cohen. It's one of his lyrics, and it goes, ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering, there is a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in. And that for me was really important, because I felt that it was, you know, it was the cracks in the characters that let their light in. And Riley doesn't have a crack. So in a way, he's the contrast to all the others, because the others all have these imperfections and he doesn't. And I think that's why in the end, he's, I don't know how much I can say without spoilers.
The books, I'm sure everybody has read the book. So, you know, what, you know, like I said, writing such a perfect character is not easy, and yet you have. So we would love to know, what was it? Like you said, there was no crack. So how is the light going to get into this character? What was the thought process behind that?
I think he would probably develop cracks over the years. He would become a more complex character over time. I think part of the reason Riley was so perfect is his youth and his optimism. He's just a wonderful, sunny character, which is why I made him Australian, actually, because I felt that it was a country of real optimism. And and I guess he came from, when I went traveling for some time. When I was about 19, I went off by myself backpacking around various parts of the world, and I ended up for quite some time on a little island in Thailand, which is where Hazard Island came from.
Right.
So that was very, very much based on my experience there. And I was very young and naive, and and I think I look back to then and I thought about back then who my perfect man would be, and that was where Riley came from.
So well said. Yeah, but like you said, the beauty of it is that everything is so correct about him, and yet what is it about Monica's heart that she loves him, to a certain degree, but what is it that it's the broken that attracts her, is what I would say. And
and the depth, there's this fabulous Japanese art form called is kintsugi, which is what they do is they take broken pottery, beautiful vases that are broken, and they mend them with liquid gold.
Right.
And what they say is that what you end up with, the repaired, cracked original. The repaired vase is much more beautiful than the original.
Right.
And it's very much a part of their philosophy as well, which is that it's as you develop cracks in your life and you fill them in and you grow and learn, you become more beautiful. And that's, I think, what Monica realizes, is that Riley may be perfect on the outside, but he's very much like the social media feed that looks perfect and has no depth. And Hazard has lots of layers. He is much more complicated, but as a result, he is more, he's more human, and he's learned more, and he has more innate wisdom. And I think it is something I think about more as I get older, and it's why I loved writing Julian, because one thing we're really bad at in Britain is valuing older people, and valuing wisdom and valuing aging. We tend to value youth, and we think youth is everything, and youth is beautiful and aspirational, and and I wanted to write characters that were older and more interesting because of that.
Absolutely. But like I said, youth is without those lines, and I keep saying that it's the lines that tell you the character line, what makes the face so beautiful. And now post my diagnosis, like I say, I keep always say that, kind of embrace the imperfections, because that's what it is. That's the reality. Life is imperfect. It's not.
Yeah. And you see,
is the perfection. We are just making ourselves unhappy. So that's a beautiful message also. If this book turns into a movie, which of the actors, who can you see playing these characters?
Oh, I've had so many messages from people suggesting characters, suggesting actors and actresses, and I have sold the TV rights and the movie rights, actually. So I think hopefully it will be a Netflix series. That's the plan. You know how these things work. But in my head, Julian is Bill Nighy, so from Love Actually, and he would be my perfect Julian. Other people have suggested Ian McKellen, but for me, Bill Nighy, and And
What
for
about
me,
Hazard?
Hazard is Bradley Cooper. Um,
Ooh,
so,
okay.
and Monica, I still can't decide. So I don't know. What do you think?
No, I don't know. She's lovely. She's so relatable because I have OCD too, so that is very relatable. But yeah, sounds interesting. But congratulations, and if this, I really hope it comes out on Netflix or wherever it is that it's going to come out at the movie, because this is one thing I would love to see.
Oh,
If
I hope so.
been on the OTT platforms, everything is constantly so dark and something so horrible is constantly happening to people that I, for one, would really be looking forward to this. I'm really looking forward to it. Tell me,
Yeah.
if you were to find a authenticity project or an authenticity notebook in your life, what would you do with it?
Well, I sort of feel like I've told the whole truth about my
Yeah.
life already. Because, I wrote the blog, and then I turned the blog into a memoir called The Sober Diaries, and I published that, which was my authenticity project, really.
Right.
And so I feel like I have been very open about my life already. But I like to think that I would be like Monica, and I would I think everyone would read the book. And the reason I made it a notebook and not, something on the internet, which is what I did, is because I think people are always fascinated by handwriting, aren't they? You so rarely see handwriting these days. And, if you saw a book which somebody had written in by hand and abandoned, you would read it. And I like to think that I would do what Monica does, which is to try and find the person that wrote in the book and to write my own story too. And I think it takes courage. But do you read Brené Brown?
Yes.
She writes about vulnerability and the power of vulnerability, and writing your truth, telling people your truth is very frightening. It makes you very vulnerable, but when you make yourself vulnerable, magical things happen.
That's so true, and so well said. And yes, if I found one, I would definitely want to pass it on, and I would really want to know who gets it after me and travel. That journey of that book would be very interesting. I would be really interested in that. Tell me, you mentioned Brené Brown, but who are the authors who have influenced you? Which are the books you've been a reader all your life, and what is it that influenced your life? Author, books, which one?
Gosh. I read so many different genres and so many different types of book, and they've all influenced me in different ways. But there's a series of books written about 1970s San Francisco called Tales of the City by Armistead Maupin. And they're fabulous books about this this community of people in a big city. And I think that helped influence the Authenticity Project, because I love those stories where different people come together who would not normally come together.
Right.
And the magic of community and the kindness that you find within those communities. So I think that was a real influence on this book particularly. But generally I love imperfect, quirky characters. So when I was a teenager, I read so many books that had perfect heroines, and they always had perfect skin and beautiful eyes and perfect hair. And I think, yeah.
And then you kind of
and I loved the characters that were less perfect. So Jane Austen, Emma was my favorite, because Emma is the character who is really quite flawed and a bit tricky and mean, and I thought she was fabulous. And more recently, Eleanor Oliphant is a wonderful, flawed, incredibly quirky and layered heroine. So yes, it's the books with the heroes and heroines that are not perfect that I love.
That's really. So Claire, what's next? What should we look forward to?
Oh, well, I'm actually working on I'm about to start editing the next novel, and I won't tell you the title because the title will probably change as I've
Right,
learned.
absolutely. So we'll
But
just call it Claire's Next for now.
yeah, but it's a very similar feel. It's about, again, it's about quirky characters, it's about community and kindness, but it's very different people in a very different setting. So and that will come out, I hope, in 2022. So
Oh, we are really looking forward to it, Claire. But
thank you.
I would just like to say this again, that through this pandemic, this was a ray of hope and a ray of light, and with so many dark things happening. And it was not just about it being funny, but about the kindness and the compassion and the realness in the book was so lovely. And it did pull me out of my funk, which I was in. So your book has been like a therapy to me in this pandemic, because I was going through a dark period and this really pulled me out of that. So thank you so much. It was so
Thank you.
to read your book, talking to you. And Claire, we are definitely looking forward to your next. Thank you so much for joining the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me here, for choosing my book, for being so lovely. And I really appreciate it. And I hope things go well for all of you and that we're all out of this as soon as we can be.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And let's just pray for a healthy 2021 now. Bye.